Good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. As I said, my name is Steve Fredricks from Turrentine Brokerage, and we broker bulk wines and grapes. They've asked me to speak to you today about the factors you can consider when buying or selling wine in bulk or strategic brands. And you've heard a lot of interesting, as the gentleman back there mentioned, a lot of interesting comments today from people and a lot of good information about the market from different perspectives. From Deborah and Donna this morning about different aspects of the legal aspects of wine, why people do things, and then from Tim about how people blend and put stuff together. As a broker, I kind of have a unique perspective on it. I'm the person that puts the deals together and understands how the market works. I've been doing this for a long time and done a lot of other research about it, but I've become a really big believer in behavioral economics and also the science of decision making, that what we see is how much emotion and history and other kinds of factors people bring to bear when they're putting deals together, how they prioritize what they need, and how those priorities for what they need may shift. So my job is to try to bring all that stuff together with how it really works in terms of actual market dynamics. So today what we'll do is go through some of the information we put together to help people understand the market. Then we'll look at some of that data and why it's important for people to pay attention to in terms of market cycles and what drive the cycles for supply and demand in the market on the supply side. And then we'll talk about, and I'll explain a little bit of the factors that you got to consider with regards to buying and selling bulk wine in order to really be prepared. So again, Turrentine was established in 1973. You heard from Bobby Cook of the Wine Institute first thing this morning, and Dan Turrentine, who founded Turrentine Brokerage, started to work for the Wine Institute right after World War II in the 40s and became the general manager of the Wine Institute for a number of years before working for the California Winery Advisory Board. So we've got a long history in the wine business. We broker bulk wines and grapes. We're the largest in terms of grape brokers in California, working with all buyers and sellers from all sizes, from 5 tons of Howell Mountain Cabernet at $10,000 a ton to 1,000 tons of French Colombard from the Fresno area. So we work with everybody in terms of that. We also have started a division of brokering strategic brands, which is what our name is for control brand, private label wines, for some of the global relationships that we've set up over the years and for select domestic partners. And then they mentioned the research that we do with regards to bringing this information to bear. With the global relationships we've set up well over 10 years ago, relationships with brokers in each market. They're also there understanding the culture and climate of their market. CIVS, Yanko Pelagi, covering France and Italy and Spain, and he's here for the next couple of days meeting with customers. San Nicolas Wine Services, Antonio Punti at the Punti Ferrer stand in the exhibit hall for Chile and Argentina. Ost Wine in Australia, that allows us to, when we have buyers come to us and need wine and dynamics from around the world, we're able to go and get real-time information from that. We're also able to work in those markets in terms of culture. The business of wine in Australia is different. They may speak the same language as us, and maybe their slang is a little bit different, but they speak the same language, but their culture is different, and the business culture in Australia is different than what it operates in the United States or California. In Spain, if you go talk to a producer in Spain, most likely they're going to say yes, first off, to whatever you're proposing. And in France, if you go to a producer and you ask them for a product, their first answer most likely is going to be no. Well, how do you know how to work through the culture to continue to work with the Spanish supplier to really outline what it is that you need so that they're really sure and your expectations are there so that yes really means yes, that they can do it? And how do you discuss with the French supplier all that you need to try to convince them that no isn't really what they meant, they really meant yes and they can really do it? So that's part of what we're able to bring, is that information of people and getting people to come to agreements. One of the things Turrentine has been respected for and known for is the wine business cycles that Bill Turrentine wrote about in the early 90s. People didn't really talk much about the wine business and our cycles of supply and demand and really analyze the wide swings in supply and what were the drivers of those changes, looking at consumer demand, acreage, that can change, and the long-term supply, how seasonal to season supply changes from a short crop or a crop bigger than normal, or qualitative things. How the demand for bulk wine may shift. As a broker, we get first wind of some of the new things that are happening in the market. We knew months before most everybody else knew how hot Moscato was going to be, because we had 5 or 6 people already come to the bulk market, source everything that was there, and start looking around the world. And then about 3 months later, we started to get calls from everybody every day wanting to do a Moscato, and we were telling, hey, sorry, the supply's already locked up, you're too late. Some people believed us, others didn't, and made some mistakes. So with these cycles, it's important and imperative to know when you're planning ahead. And the drivers of the cycles for this, I mean, we have a whole history of this on the website that Bill's written up for the cycles over the years. What were some of the drivers and the dynamics around it? So you can go there and research. And really what we're trying to do with it is have people understand what are the drivers that has, say, the bulk market at the peak of shortage and the grape market at peak of shortage. Looking at consumer demand, what may have driven that? Is there some new product, say Moscato? Or if there's a huge change in supply, a number of acres planted a few years before. Because when we have a shortage of supply and we've got to plant new acres, it takes a while for that supply to come to the market. As Tim just mentioned, it could take 3, 4, 5, 10 years before a supply can really change for some new need that's come on. And what happens is, because of high price and no new supply into the marketplace, there continues to be grapes added, and then maybe we oversupply that can cause a short-term or long-term dip in the market. So we look at all those aspects of the bulk market and try to help our customers to look ahead and plan ahead. If you're on the end, the retail at the end, and you're seeing this new demand, it could be that many acres have been planted for the last few years, and people have already taken steps to satisfy the need that you see in the marketplace. So by the time you've gone through to get your new product to market, the competitive landscape may be very different. Our job is to help you guys see ahead, both buyer and seller, to not get yourself in a position that you can't get out. So we're going to start looking at a few charts that demonstrate some of the data and why it's important to know. This first chart is what we research, our proprietary research, with regards to the acres bearing and non-bearing. And so we're looking at Paso Robles Cabernet Sauvignon here, a key variety with a lot of growth. This is from 1997 all the way through 2021. The dark blue are the acres that were bearing at the time. The yellow are the acres that were planted but are not yet fully bearing. So you can see in the early 90s, they're 97 or the late 90s, 97 through 2002, a lot of acres went in the ground. So a lot of people had taken steps to put new acres of Cabernet, but we weren't getting new supply off of it. Then you see through the mid-2000s where there was flat supply, not a lot of new acres going in, and then we see a jump up in 12, 13, 14, 15 of new acres. Not a lot of supply yet from those new acres, but from our vantage point, we're looking ahead for you and could say, look, the competitive landscape may be very different by the time you get your product to market because people have already taken steps. Then we look ahead. You can see the light blue are the projected acres that will be bearing into the future. From what we know in the research and the work we're doing negotiating planting deals, we see the supply and demand, how many acres are out there, what's the price per ton, and whether there's an incentive to keep planting. And we're seeing probably that planting boom's going to wane a little bit. We also look at the recent crop history. Mother Nature has a huge influence on crop beyond what man can sustain, so that the crop can vary greatly. So even if there's acres in the ground, we could have a short crop. You need to know the long-term dynamic and the short-term, whether this high price is a result of a short crop or whether it's a result of a change in demand where there truly isn't enough. So this chart shows the competitive regions for Cabernet Sauvignon in California and including the state of Washington as an example of how things can change with a change in season from Mother Nature. The blue are the tons crushed and harvested in that region in 2014. The orange are the tons crushed in 2015, and the gray is the 2,000 tons crushed in 2016. And when buyers come to us, we're advising them, you want to do a Cabernet at a certain price point. Well, here are your options. So you've got Napa, Sonoma County, the North Coast, which as bulk and grape buyers come to us, they combine Lake and Mendocino together. The Central Coast, which combines Monterey, Paso Robles, Santa Barbara County. The Lodi Delta is the premium area of the interior where a lot of people are looking. And then the rest of California is the remaining areas in the vast Central Valley, along with Washington. So what the cyclical change in here shows how short the 2015 crop was compared to 2014, especially in Napa, Sonoma, and the Paso Robles area in southern Monterey. A very light crop. When we needed those grapes, people's Cabernet programs were doing well. You could see the rebound to 2016 in terms of those yields returning, plus better than the year before in the Central Coast area and Lodi Delta. That's from some supply off of new acres. So we have the vision to see what's happening. If you came to us after 2015 and trying to buy Paso Robles Cabernet, it's a lot different price than it was after the 2014 crop and a lot different price after the 2016 crop. So we're able to help you guys get clarity to pricing trends. And a lot of new acres going in Washington. So we can help people look ahead. You want to develop your Cabernet at $15 a bottle and see an opportunity. We're going to say is by the time you go through the process, it could be a very different marketplace, for a competitive marketplace for that Cabernet. Then we'll also look at the bulk market. This might be a different, where Tim was talking about people coming to the market. That's our job, is to find buyers and sellers and negotiate deals and put them together. So this is one of the other charts we're known for. It's the bulk wine actively for sale through Turrentine Brokerage. And the key here are the changes over time. And I've tried to look at a long snapshot for you so you could see some of how, when there was new acres planted, the resulting effect of maybe more bulk wine actively for sale that were in excess to what people needed. So this is all wine separated by appellation. The brown at the top are the volume of California appellated bulk Cabernet. The green is the volume of Central Coast appellated Cabernet. The yellow is the volume of that Lake and Mendocino North Coast Cabernet. Red is Sonoma County appellated, and blue are Napa Valley. So you see, when we saw all those acres go in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, we overplanted a little bit, which meant excess wine on the bulk market, is that exacerbated by a tough economy for certain things that put wine on the bulk market, and it sat there for a while. We were telling people that's a possibility, that's a strong probability that's going to happen. Be prepared for it. Then you saw that, if you looked at that acreage chart again, it was through those years in the 2000s where planting stopped. We finally got to an area where demand had grown in excess of the supply, exacerbated by a short crop in 2011. And now we're at the point where we've had new acres planted and we're starting to see wines come to the market. So that's what our ability to be able to look at the different supply and demand scenarios. We can also look at that by price that help us further to give you guys guidance of the demand-supply balance and truly the market trends. It was on a slide earlier. Price isn't always the great indicator of what's going on in the market. You need to know all of the aspects of the market to really make good decisions. But what this chart shows is the collateral value, the average price range of Cabernet from Paso Robles since '97 all the way through 2017. And you could see, if you'd started a product in the late 90s and you were planning on getting that high of a price as a bulk wine seller, and you didn't set it up so that you could operate in 2004 through 2010 when it was between $6 and $8 a gallon. Business was pretty tough at that time, so you've got to really be thinking ahead. If you started a new strategic brand private label product or a bulk wine agreement, and you could make contracts to get wine for less than $8 a gallon for a number of years, and you weren't prepared that maybe, looking ahead, that's really not the true cost of production. That's not paying the grower enough to be sustainable. The price has got to be $12 to $15 a gallon for that guy to be sustainable, for you to be able to be sustainable. If you put your cost of goods at too low a level and now the market shifts around, you may have to look for another appellation, or your profit margin may have disappeared. We'll also try to stay on top of consumer trends. Tim mentioned a while ago, or just at the end of his speech, about once you set your price, it's pretty tough to change it no matter what goes on. And we also look at where wines are selling and what's growth in the marketplace. This is some research done by IBWSS looking at Nielsen information and also the shipment data. And what they did was they looked at a number of brands that have been in the market since 2009 and are still in the market at 2015 at various price points. And they've seen a huge amount of growth in certain price points, 7 to 12, 12 to 20, and 20 plus. And what that's done is brought a lot of interest in the market, a lot of new product development. People are coming through and say, hey, you know, I see growth in that market, let's start a new brand. So we've got a lot of our customers that are saying, I want more grapes to grow my brand. I need to grow and change the footprint of where I'm growing. New development of new brands at higher price points. So we know there's a lot of market activity with more wines coming to the market to satisfy some of those demands. The other thing we look at is like I mentioned, price. This is their research on the existing brand compound annual growth rate of their retail price point from 2009 to 2015. As you'll probably hear from Nat in another minute, costs for grape growers have been going up, costs for wineries, regulation, cost of goods, labor have gone up, yet people, what this chart is showing is people really haven't been able to change the retail price of their product. So even though their costs are going up, hard to really change your price. You've got to make sure that you have some pretty good margins in there and understand where supply's coming from to maintain profitability if you're in the spot market and the market can shift. Well, now some of the quick things to how to operate in the market. And as a bulk buyer and bulk seller, if you come to Turrentine or any good broker and you're trying to understand what do I need to do to get in this, we're going to ask you a number of questions. There's a lot of work you need to do. First off, we're going to ask if you got money ready to go. People are going to expect you to be ready to buy today if you want to taste samples and do a product. If you want to be in the market for a while and grow, is your financing something that can grow with you as your product grows? You're most likely going to not have your cash out of the first vintage of product before you got to go invest in the next vintage. And if you're growing, it takes an ever increasing line of credit to succeed in the wine business. This is where most people get into trouble and fail. How are you going to ship the product around depending on size? Have you done your research? If truckload quantities are 6,400, if you want to ship something smaller, how's that going to move safely to keep quality of the product? Are you going to move it in totes? Where are you going to take that product? Do you have storage already set up? Are they going to be prepared to store through harvest for you if need be? Who's going to provide bottling services for you? What type of wine do you want, or what options do you think there are for you? Have you done that research? If you're a seller, have you thought through, I'm marketing this product to a bunch of buyers. Have I cleaned up the wine to make it presentable? A buyer's just going to look at a whole bunch of samples across the table. He's going to look at color. If the color doesn't match with what it should be, you may not even get a second look. It's just going to be pushed back. Have you thought through maybe doing a little bit of blending to get it to a more reasonable rate for someone to say, I can use this right away? If it's later in the season, is it much closer to being finished? Have you given the proper information to the broker who you could work with regards to this? The volume, the appellation, the percentages of each, the varietal percentages, a lot number, any quick lab work. What kind of volume do you have? So that it can be on the label. If I'm a buyer, I need all that information if I'm going to blend and buy this wine. What is it? Don't make them guess. Package it in a manner in which you have shown that you've put value on the product. If a buyer's sitting there and he sees something in a shoddy information on it, doesn't look clear, it's not color, but he may think that's a bargain. You don't care about it, gives him an opportunity to offer you a lower price. So now you've thought through, as a number of you are here today thinking about you want to start your own brand, Chateau de Moi. It has a great ring to it, your own brand. You know what your customers want, and you'd like that product to have your brand and name on it. Well, we're going to ask you, are you ready to execute? A lot of the questions I just asked from a bulk standpoint are going to be those same questions when you come to us. And I've sort of put the process into 3 stages. One is preparation, tasting and options, and then execution. Execution is the most important one Tim had it on his slide kind of at the end story in a way, and the other speakers this morning mentioned distribution. How are you going to sell the product? Why are people going to want your product versus what else is out there? How are you going to incentivize the people you need, the importer if it's an imported product, the distributor, to get the product to your stores, to get the product to your hotels and provide service? What's in it for them? They're already doing this business, making good margins from their suppliers, and they may not need any other business. Why are they going to help you out? Is really important. That's the first thing you should be thinking about. Why can I sell this product, and why is someone going to want this product from me? So when it comes to preparation, this is the area where you need to be doing a lot of thinking. Again, with financing. Are you properly licensed to do what you want to do? What case quantities do you want to buy and are efficient for you as a buyer of it? What FOB price do you need it to be? What retail price are you looking for? Have you tasted some of the wines and have a benchmark for what you'd like to make? Have you got any brand names trademarked? It was mentioned earlier today. Have you got any labels designed? Or certificate of label approval? Have you thought through that aspect of it? That takes some time to get through to being done and agreed to. And if you're finding bulk wine and then going to go and develop all these things, by the time you develop all these things, it could be vintage late for that product to be in the marketplace. A lot of these things I've written about recently, and there's a list on our website for both the bulk buy and selling information and the strategic brand information. But as a buyer of them, are you prepared to taste? Do you know what you're looking for? Do you have a consultant ready to help you finish out these wines and get them bottled? As a seller of strategic brands, what FOB price points make it profitable for you to continue to sell? Do you have varieties that they can use to correct and blend in-house to help them get the product they want? Do you have the storage capacity and the financial capacity to hold these wines for somebody who may need to ship them over time? These are all things where our job is to look through and find what have been successful agreements negotiated and what have been unsuccessful agreements negotiated. Our job is to take that expectation and bring people to the middle so they're very clear on what their roles and responsibilities are so that they can actually draft up the legal agreement. You can only work on a legal agreement if you've really understood what are the roles and responsibilities of everybody. As a buyer and seller, are you seeking a one-time deal, or is this something you want to be in the market for multiple years? Well, the partners with regards to wine for sale are vastly different if you're looking at this as an ongoing project than if it's just a one-time deal. And you want to make sure as a buyer you're setting yourself up a relationship with a long-term seller versus a spot market seller. So where a lot of people can make mistakes and then they got to start all over again the next year. That's our job, and the job of a broker is to really know the participants in the market. We've been doing this for a long period of time and have experience of understanding what people can and can't do. When do you want to launch your product? If it's October, November, December, you better start in January to get going on stuff, to have it in the marketplace at that time. If it's the winter time and you're looking at that time, January, and you're going to the southern hemisphere, they're in the middle of harvest. They may not have inventory at the volume you want, nor time to really answer questions when you need them answered and to answer your questions and to respond. When it comes to tastings, do you have a panel? Are you prepared to taste and be consistent with your tasting? Do you understand the timeline for samples? Do you need nowadays a COLA waiver from the TTB to get samples in? It takes us 3 weeks to get an answer from the TTB for a COLA waiver for samples now, and it takes a week for a brand new label. You got to get a prior notice. You know, where are the samples coming from? Are they properly labeled? So it takes time to work back and forth with understanding terminology also with sellers. You say sweet, they're thinking soft. Our job is to put that terminology together. Do you know when you can pay in terms of financing and options, when you want to ship the product, or all these things that were negotiated and all the points that were brought up earlier today that you need to be thinking about from the legal standpoint. That's our job, to continue to try to find a way to negotiate those and get it written up and those expectations done. When it comes to execution, this is a very important aspect of execution. For both buyer and seller, have you figured out who is going to distribute and import this product for you and why? Because you could want to, as a retailer, buy this product, but if there's no one to help fulfill upon it, to help get it legally from the producer through to your operation, there's really not much that can be done. That's the most challenging aspect of the wine business, is understanding the three-tier distribution network in the United States and how can you get the products through? Are you coming to the market with volumes necessary that are going to drive the business and the desire for these people to work with you? Have you also figured out how you're going to incentivize your salespeople to market and merchandise the product? I was mentioned earlier today, that's really key. Some of the businesses that were mentioned this morning, they've learned those lessons over years, that they can't just go to a large chain retailer and expect their product to sell and be merchandised, because you've got Gallo and Constellation and Southern and all these people in there re-merchandising and maybe setting your product off to the side, and the salespeople in the store may not really care very much about their own product. So you've got to really work through those aspects of it. So I know I've gone through some challenges for you and made this seem daunting. There's a lot of work and a lot of organization that needs to be done. That's the job of the brokers and people who are experienced to give you the guidance necessary and to have you be prepared to tackle these challenges and come through. That's our job, is to explain and work through the marketplace for you. So I hope that I've given you some insights about how the market can work, cycles, the importance of understanding history and understanding where the market is, supply, demand, and price, and where it could be going. Understood some of the things and choices that you've got to make and decisions you've got to make before you come to the market. There are all different kinds of buyers and sellers ready to work with you, and you need to be clear about who you really need to work with. Thank you.